Every single morning, more than two-thirds of American adults reach for a breakfast that's quietly setting their blood sugar up to crash by 10 a.m. The cereal, the toast, the oatmeal, the orange juice, all the things we've been told for decades are heart-healthy. And here's the myth that's ruined more mornings than anything else: the idea that fat at breakfast is the enemy, while grains and fruit are the safe choice. It's almost exactly backwards. Today, we're counting down 6 specific foods, the ones a very unconventional, data-obsessed physician relied on for decades of self-monitored blood sugar testing, that together can build you a breakfast which barely moves the needle at all. And stick around, because near the end we're busting the biggest fat versus carb myth of them all, the one that's been repeated in doctors' offices for 50 years. Number 6 on this list: heavy cream, butter, and olive oil. There are 3 camps on fat, and it's worth knowing all 3 before you make a decision. One camp still says avoid it entirely and stick to low-fat everything. Another says fat is fine only if it's the right unsaturated kind like olive oil, while butter and cream stay suspect. A third camp, backed by the actual mechanism, says none of these raise blood sugar directly, full stop, because fat contains no glucose precursor at all, and insulin is fundamentally the hormone that responds to carbohydrate and protein, not fat. The clearest resolution is this: fat eaten without significant carbohydrate produces very little insulin response and gets metabolized rather than stored, while that same fat eaten alongside bread or potatoes gets converted into stored body fat by the insulin surge those carbs cause. A splash of heavy cream in your eggs, rail butter for cooking, olive oil in the pan, none of it moves your morning glucose number in any meaningful way. And monounsaturated fats like olive oil have even been associated with lower cardiovascular risk over the long term. So don't let that spoonful of cream sit in your coffee out of guilt. It's not the villain you've been told it is. Number 5. Real GG Scandinavian brand crisp bread. If you've been mourning the loss of toast, this is your fix, and it's going to sound unfamiliar, which is exactly the point. A single slice of regular bread contains roughly 12 grams of fast-acting carbohydrate, converted to glucose almost as quickly as table sugar. One of these brand crisp breads contains about 3 grams, made mostly of indigestible fiber rather than flour. Here's how to actually use it. Soften 2 crisp breads in a couple of teaspoons of water for about 5 minutes, dip them in a beaten egg with a little cinnamon, and pan-fry them a few minutes per side. And you end up with something remarkably close to French toast for around 7 grams of total carbohydrate. Or crumble them into a coarse crumb, mix with egg, and cook it up closer to a pancake. The one caveat: eat these with enough liquid, since the bran fiber can be constipating in large amounts, and skip them entirely if you deal with any kind of delayed stomach emptying, since that fiber can form a plug in a slow-moving stomach. Number 4. Cheese, one of the most underrated breakfast tools there is. Most cheeses, aside from cottage cheese, run around 1 gram of carbohydrate per ounce, paired with meaningful protein, fat, and calcium. Melt some over your eggs, layer it with your bacon, or eat a slice on the side, and the carbohydrate load barely registers. The exception worth knowing is cottage cheese specifically, which contains more lactose than hard or cream cheeses because it's only partially fermented, so it can raise blood sugar more than people expect from something marketed as a diet food. Stick to the hard and cream varieties if flat blood sugar is the goal. Number 3. Avocado, which behaves completely differently from the sweet fruits most people lump it in with. When you picture fruit wrecking blood sugar, apples, oranges, bananas, avocado doesn't belong in that category at all, even though technically it is one. Half of a small avocado runs about 6 grams of carbohydrate, almost entirely from fiber your body can't break down into glucose, alongside a healthy dose of potassium and slow-digesting monounsaturated fat. Sliced onto your eggs or mashed with a little salt and lemon, it adds creaminess and volume without meaningfully moving your blood sugar. The one thing to watch is portion creep. A whole large avocado can push past 15 grams of carbohydrate, so half is generally the number worth sticking to if a flat morning is what you're after. If this kind of practical, number-driven breakdown is useful to you, go ahead and subscribe, because we've still got 2 more items to go, and we're covering a lot more of these mechanism-level food breakdowns going forward. Number 2, bacon, sausage, and other breakfast meats, which get treated like a guilty pleasure, something to feel bad about after the fact. But be honest, has anyone ever actually explained to you why? The common belief is that saturated fat and processed meat are somehow directly toxic to your metabolism first thing in the morning. What actually happens is almost the opposite of what you'd expect. These meats contain essentially zero carbohydrate, meaning they place close to no immediate demand on your insulin response. Protein and fat together also stimulate the release of a hormone called PYY, which signals genuine fullness to your brain, which is why a bacon and egg breakfast keeps people satisfied for hours in a way a carb-heavy breakfast never quite manages. Here's a simple way to build this in. Cook 2 strips of bacon or a sausage patty in a pan while your eggs are going in another. Add a small handful of diced pepper or a few mushrooms if you want volume without meaningful carbohydrate. Half a cup of most low-carb vegetables adds only about 6 grams. Combine it all on one plate and you're looking at a full breakfast with somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 to 5 grams of total carbohydrate, which for most people translates to a blood sugar rise measured in single digits rather than the 50 to 100-point swings a bagel produces. If you notice bloating or unusual fatigue after eating meats like this, check the label. Some bacon and sausage sneak in added sugar during the curing process, and that's the exception that can quietly undo the benefit. And number 1, the anchor of the entire breakfast, eggs. Be honest, when's the last time you thought twice about eating eggs, other than worrying they'd wreck your cholesterol? That worry comes from an old assumption that dietary fat and cholesterol translate directly into blood cholesterol and clogged arteries. And researchers looking at large population data have found essentially no meaningful link between egg consumption and heart disease risk in people whose blood sugar is under control. Here's the mechanism that actually matters for your morning glucose. Eggs are almost pure protein and fat, with next to no carbohydrate, so they don't trigger the rapid glucose spike that grain-based breakfasts do. Your liver can convert some amino acids into glucose through a slow process called gluconeogenesis, but only gradually and only when your body genuinely needs it, nothing like the almost instant glucose flood from a bowl of cereal. A simple 2-egg omelet with a little cream comes in under 4 grams of carbohydrate and delivers around 6 grams of protein, small enough numbers that even a sluggish insulin response can handle without a spike. If you've been eating eggs and still feeling a crash by mid-morning, the warning sign to watch for is what you're pairing them with. Toast, juice, or a starchy side will undo everything the eggs were doing for you. One caveat: egg whites alone digest slightly faster and convert to glucose a bit more efficiently than the whole egg, so if you notice more of a rise, keep the yolk in.